Welcome to Left the Chaff, a YouTube channel dedicated to building EDH decks where we leave the chaff on the table. Today we're building Hashaton Scarab's Fist, a 1/3 legendary zombie wizard for white and black. Whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue, and if you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. With these stats, we're looking to create a deck that is synergistic through the idea of discarding creature cards and getting payoffs for them, making more zombies and making copies of those zombies or populating those tokens. Also, gathering creatures that when returning to the battlefield might have an ETB effect or be able to help us take control of the game. We're looking to win through cards like Massacre Worm, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and great synergies through our discarding to get new cards for the situation we might be in. Starting off, we want to be discarding cards. So there's quite a few cards that we have that will allow us to discard a card. Many will be mentioned in other areas, but first of all, let's look at the ones that are like looters. Starting with creatures like Merfolk Looter, which is simply a looter, draw a card then discard a card by tapping it. Likeness Looter, which does the same but also has flying, and you can pay X into it to become a copy of a target creature in your graveyard with mana value X, the amount that you pay in. Arcade Ganon allows you to loot, but also put a quest counter on it, and once during your turns you may cast an artifact or human spell from your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the number of quest counters, so other humans have been included. Obsessive Stitcher is a looter, but also allows you to pay 4 and sacrifice it to return a target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Matzalantli, the Great Door, is an artifact that works like a looter, and by paying 4 you can tap it to transform it, creating a card that allows you to create a large amount of mana for having creatures in your graveyard. Temet, from the precon itself, is not a looter, but whenever you attack does a loot, and also makes sure the zombies of the tokens that you're making, and some of the zombies in the deck, get a +1/+1 until end of turn. And then there are some cards that are straight just discard for an ability. Undertaker allows you to discard a card from your hand and return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Tortured Existence, which many of these decks are using, lets you discard a creature card and return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand itself as well. The Underworld Cookbook allows you to discard a card to create a food, and if by paying 4 you could return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Monastery Siege works like a slight looter. When it's on the battlefield, it can make you draw an additional card on your draw step and then discard a card for doing so, or can be used as a secondary protection spell by allowing spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control to cost 2 more to cast. Academy Elite enters the battlefield with multiple counters based on the amount of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, and you can remove those to loot. Disciple of Deceit says that when it becomes untapped, you may discard a non-land card, and if you do, search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost. Evie Fry allows you to tap her to draw a card and then discard a card, and when you discard a creature card this way, target creature you control can't be blocked, giving some more protection. Key to the City lets you tap it, discard a card, and up to 1 target creature can't be blocked, giving more protection, with the ability to pay 2 to draw a card when it untaps. Forgotten Creation is a great wheel effect for yourself, so you're able to discard multiple creatures but get a brand new set of cards. And then there's a series of cards that allow you to cycle other cards, or do something with cycling. Nimble Obstructionist says that when you cycle it, you may counter a target activated or triggered ability, which is quite a useful counter spell. Void Beckoner says that when you cycle it, you can put a Death Touch counter on a target creature. And Reptune Mystic says that each card in your hand has cycling for 1 and a blue. A lot of these cards will help us to put the creature cards that we want to have go in the bin, so that we have ways to do that for free and then pay the free mana to have them come back to the graveyard as a copy. Of course we want to get payoffs for discarding or doing Hashaton's thing, so cards like Cryptcaller Chariot allow us to create zombies when we discard cards, giving us additional bodies to the table. Dortport Mage says that when other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, we draw a card, so those zombie tokens that are leaving at the end step will get us a card in return, and can also be used as protection to bounce a creature back to our hand. Monument to Endurance is a lot of people's favourite card from Aether Drift due to its ability to be quite a powerful artifact, and in this deck helps you to discard a card, to draw a card, create a treasure token, or have each opponent lose 3 life. On Wings of Gold, creatures you control that are zombies, the tokens we're making, will get +1/+1 and have flying for a bit of evasion. And whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. Undead Augur says that if a creature dies, you draw a card. Now obviously our main thing with Hashaton is having tokens exile, but obviously if other people try and stop our plan, the creatures we control will be dying probably, and therefore we can get some new cards. And Wonder is a great creature to have in the graveyard, because it will give all of our other creatures evasion with a bit of flying. With all of these tokens coming out, some of them are worth copying. Some of the cards that we have that land an ETB might also need to be able to do something else. So cards like Mirrorhole Mimic that come in and make a copy of a creature on the battlefield, which doesn't have to be your own, is a fantastic way to copy a token that we create. It's also a great way to steal another card from someone else in a sense. And once it's taken off the board, it comes back and you create a copy of a token enchanted creature. And that way you're continuing to make more tokens of the card that you want to have copied. Quasi-Duplicate is quite an expensive spell for what it does, considering we might be just copying one of our own tokens, but it does have Jumpstart, meaning that you could discard another card, a creature of course, to copy a creature that's already on the board. The two uses of Quasi-Duplicate make it a bit better for its cost, and replace Hashaton when you're not able to use him to do the 2 and a blue skill. Rootborn Defenses gives an ability to give protection by giving indestructible to all creatures we control, but also allows us to populate one of our creatures. Wake the Reflections is just a populate spell, but a fantastic one to use when we need a secondary version of the same creature. Song of the World Soul is a card that says whenever you cast a spell, populate, so an expensive enchantment that gives us extra copies of the creatures we control. And all of these different cards help us to make copies of the ones that matter to us most. This deck seems to have a bit more ramp than the other ones I've provided so far, but they have a lot to do with there being creatures in this list for ramp as well. Starting off with our rocks, we have Arcane Signet for all colours of our commander, Talisman of Dominance, Talisman of Hierarchy, and Talisman of Progress to get us the 2 additional colours we need for our commander, Felwar Stone to get most likely all the colours in our commander's colours, and then Collector's Vault does make us a treasure token, but is also a great looting card as well. Crowded Crypt is here because we do obviously have zombies in this deck, and we are creating zombies. It's a fantastic mana rock that fits in the zombie theme, even if you're not fully on the theme. Then we have the creatures. Bog Witch is a really interesting card that says pay black, tap, discard card from your hand, probably a creature, and add 3 black mana to your mana pool. A great way to dark ritual over and over and over. Lotho Corrupt Sheriff says that whenever a player casts a second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. Meaning we could possibly be getting multiple treasure tokens on 1 turn, and it doesn't matter which turn this is happening. Deep Gnome Terramancer equally says that whenever 1 or more lands enter the battlefield under an opponent's control, without being played, you may search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Timeless Dragon similarly is a plane cycling dragon, which is a fantastic thing for us to have, and you'll see later in our lands why we have so many dual lands in this deck. Weathered Wayfarer though has been added as it can get us any land that we want to our hand, getting us access to all of our lands if we need them. Our removal package includes quite a few interesting cards. Starting with just direct removal, we have things like Swords of Plowshares for exiling specific sticky creatures. Bone Shards is a way to destroy a single target creature, or planeswalker, but allowing us to discard a card to do so. Damn is fantastic as it destroys a target creature, but can also be used as a wrath. And Black Sun's Twilight can also give a creature the possibility of death, but also if enough mana is spent into it, can get us a creature from our graveyard back to battlefield. Fleshbag Marauder is a great way to remove 1 creature per player, sometimes not hitting tokens for instance, or actually just not getting something off someone else's board, but can be very situationally a strong way to remove cards. Lauren of the Third Path might have some group hug elements to it, but that's a good way to maybe politicize the game in your favour, but also when coming down can destroy a target artifact for enchantment, and kind of is our only real remove at just about anything. Massacre Worm is one of the payoffs we want to be getting the most though. This creature says that when it enters, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until the end of turn, and then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. Imagine putting this out and then populating the copy of the zombie version you've made. And Archfield of Ifnir says that if we cycle or discard another card, we put a -1/- counter on each creature our opponents control, and can be cycled itself. Probably our biggest thing to aim for, as it's a good way to really drop down our opponent's blocking board. One of our most important groups are the cards that return cards from our graveyard back to the battlefield, or at least to our hand. And here we have a number of high-hitting creatures that also have other things about them. Archpriest of the Shadows comes in and gives backup to a creature that is actually not with summoning sickness and able to attack, and therefore when that creature deals damage to an opponent, we can bring a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. Similarly, when Junji the Midnight Sky dies, we can put target non-dragon creature card from our graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Draenor, the Last Blood Chief, says that when it attacks, not when it hits, that an opponent must choose a non-legendary creature card in our graveyard and return it to the battlefield. Coiling Rebirth can get us a creature to the battlefield, but it can get us two if we're willing to give away a card. Sun Titan, simply by entering or attacking, lets us get smaller creatures back to our battlefield. And Sheoldred Whispering One says at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. But best of all, it also says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. Apprentice Necromancer can sacrifice itself to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. The creature gains haste though, and at the beginning of the end step will need to die again. However, in a pinch, this is a fantastic way to return a creature that we want from our graveyard. Stitch Together says that return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand for only 2 mana, and if there's enough cards in your graveyard already, you can have it returned to the battlefield instead. Unburial Rites is a great card similar to Dan that allows us to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, but also has flashback for even cheaper. And Victimize lets us sacrifice a creature card to return 2 creature cards to the battlefield tap, a fantastic 2 for 1 almost. Though I haven't made too many changes to the Precon's land package, I have chosen some cards to include. As we have cards out looking for plains, I have included the Snowfield Sinkhole and Glacial Floodplain, the 2 snow lands, as well as Idyllic Beachfront and Sunlit March, which are also plains lands. Now obviously you might prefer to get Shocklands, Tri-lands, something that will find a plains that doesn't come in tapped, but I'm thinking about the people who are obviously willing to spend some money on their other cards, but maybe a little less here in their lands. It just depends on what you think about lands. And every video I always say that everyone's different on what they want for lands. I've added Barren Moor, Lonely Sandbar and Secluded Steppe instead of the deserts that come with the Precon. Obviously if you've bought the Precon to get most of the cards that I've added to this deck, then you might be best sticking with those. But the ones I've added instead just cost 1 less to cycle. And we do want lands that can cycle because we wanted to discard cards. Not particularly lands, but if we are going to cycle, then we want it to be these ones that are cheaper to do so. I've added Azorius Chancery and Demir Aqueduct to make sure we have a few more bounce lands, and drop cards like Ash Barrens, Terramorphic Expanse, and similar cards that are just going to be wasted on searching for lands. I've added Tainted Field and Tainted Isle as they do great things that are similar to what Underground River, Caves of Kolios, and Adakar Wastes add. And then 2 cards that weren't in the deck but I think make a lot of sense here are Gaia Reach Sanitarium, which makes all players discard a card, including yourself, and Mirror Pool, which allows you to copy a creature that you already have on the battlefield or someone else's, or copy a spell that you control if you need to double up on one of them. As usual, consider your spending and budget versus what you are looking for. There are much better lands you can put in this deck than I've included, but that really is up to you. And that's it. We've made a great synergistic deck and left the chaff on the table. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and like the video so I know more people are watching and enjoying the show. If you have any comments to share about what you would add or remove, please add them, as I'd love to have conversations with people in the comments. Also, if you have your own ideas for the deck list, share those as well. Please link them. I'd like to see what you've done with Hashaton. I've tried to steer clear of some of the more well-known groupings of cards that have been put with Hashaton. If you want to check out the deck in its entirety, make sure you go to the description. There's a link to the Moxfield page there. You can find me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Moxfield I have an account, and Twitch I am trying to stream videos as I plan out these decks. If you'd like to join me, just come check out my Twitch account on leftthechaff as well. All of these links are provided on the YouTube. Otherwise, I thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. And until then, make sure you have left the chaff on the table.